Hey everyone, it's Forrest here, and today I'm here to give you a tutorial for Balloon Battle. This one's going to be about how to perform the bump off method. So what is the bump off? It's a strategy that consists of hitting a computer or a CPU with items such as stars, bombs, shells, bananas, fake item boxes. It can also be done with a mushroom in one move. And the reason that this strategy is important is because it can make it a lot easier to complete a battle on hard difficulty, and it speeds up the battle a lot. Let's look at a video example here. So this is footage from a battle from a player named Superstario, and he demonstrates how efficient a bump off would be. Now, he does not actually perform the bump here, but the benefits are shown. He throws a red shell to Peach, who has 2 balloons, and hits her, and she's about to go out of bounds. She loses the first balloon from the red shell and does not have time to reinflate a second balloon, and then she is eliminated, as you can see in the bottom left corner. This is why that strategy is very important, because if you do it consistently, you can get all computers eliminated in under a minute. For beginners, it's more like under 2 minutes or under a minute and a half, but it speeds up the battle a lot and has high potential to be done on any difficulty. So before we start going over how to do this strategy, I'd like to give a bit of a background. This strategy was not my invention. It was first documented by a player named Brutus in a post from March 2006 on the Mario Kart DS forum, and she calls it the double shot and says that it has several applications on stages such as Nintendo DS, Twilight House, and Palm Shore. She claims that the double shot or the bump off method is not common on Palm Shore, and I agree with this. So for this reason, I will not be covering strategies on that specific stage, but I will cover strategies on Nintendo DS and Twilight House because there are much more applications. She says that there aren't many applications on Nintendo DS, but as you can see, I don't agree with that statement. So these are routes that a player named Puddings has compiled, and this is a route that all the CPUs can take, and these orange circles are where a bump off is most easy to do. You can see on Twilight House, when the CPUs exit this room and are on this narrow pathway here, it's easy to hit them with, say, a shell, or even just go up to them while using a star, and then hit them, and they can tumble out of bounds if you're lucky. And you can also do it when a CPU is rounding the corners here, or going around the corners of the balcony. And on Nintendo DS, it's more closer to the edges when the CPUs only have one route. They can be bumped off fairly easily when you have a red shell, and you just go and hit them, and then you go and bump them in time. So let's look over how to perform a bump off. There are 2 stages to performing a bump off. First, there's the item hit, and then there's the actual bump. So let's go over the stages of an item hit, because this is what I think trips up a lot of players. So we will have initial contact when you hit the CPU with, for example, a shell, and they'll begin to tumble. When they're about halfway through their tumble, they'll bounce off the ground, which I call the first landing, and then when they land right side up again, this is when I call the second landing, and after all of that, the CPU will lose a balloon from whatever item has hit them. So let's go over a video example for this. This is footage from a player called GamerJGB, and you see he'll hit Mario with a green shell here, and let's walk through it frame by frame. When these stars appear, you know that initial contact has been made, and Mario will begin his tumble. Then you see as he goes further up, he comes down eventually, but he is not upright. So as he comes down right on his head here, he'll bounce, and this is the first landing, you see. And then go forward a few frames, and this is the second landing. And you see they do a bit of a hover at the second landing. But what's very important to know is that to perform this trick, you want to hit them right as they finish doing the second landing. So we'll go over a few video examples over how to properly perform a bump off. So as I'm coming here, I have 3 green shells, and I see Mario as he's rounding the corner very close to the edge. Now, if you followed the routes, this is the point where it's easiest to bump him off, and since he has 2 balloons, this can make for an easy elimination. So what I do is that I hit him with the green shell here, we have the initial contact, and then I sit here and wait for the second landing, and then I make sure to drive up to him and bump him off. And this works almost every time if you time the hit and the CPU is close enough to the ledge. You can see I also did it to Waluigi right there, and I prepare it to do it to Dry Bones right here. It's not as worth it if they have 3 balloons, as is the case here, but it's still better than just having the simple 1 red shell hit. So you still get 2 hits for the price of 1. And over here, here's one of my former runs on Twilight House. This is on hard difficulty. So I release a red shell as Yoshi is exiting towards the balcony area, which he is very vulnerable for a bump off. and then I wait for the second landing, and this is the next big part. You always want to make sure you bump them off from the side of their cart and not like the front or the back or any other position. And then as you can see, he does not have time to reinflate another balloon, so he's counted out of bounds with one, and even though he's got plenty of balloons in reserve, he will be eliminated. And for extra reference, here's another hit on Dry Bones, and it's the same process. Wait for the second landing, approach from the side that is furthest from the edge, and hit them on the side of their cart, and this works pretty well. So now that you've seen how to perform this strategy, let's go over a bit of troubleshooting. The first issue you might face is a weight mismatch with a character. This is a chart of all the weight factors, or all the character weights in Mario Kart DS. And what you'll want to do is, you don't want to select someone like Dry Bones or Toad, because although they have very good handling, they're almost never going to get a bump off because they're always going to go against someone who has a higher weight than they do. And I would recommend using a character such as Mario or Luigi. You might want to go for the heaviest characters. That does make the bump a bit easier, but to time the hit on the second landing, it's a little easier when you have a character that accelerates well, so these mid-weight characters are the best balance between acceleration for timing the hit and the weight needed to perform the bump off. But here's some footage from one of my previous runs where, as you can see, this does not work as well when going up against a heavy character. Right here, I'm locked in on this Bowser here with 3 balloons, but once I apply the hit, if this was Dry Bones or Toad, as I demonstrated earlier, I could just bump him off, but because Luigi has a weight factor of 0.5 and Bowser is 0.8, then that means I can't hit him off the edge as easily. And as you can see, I don't even bother trying there because I knew he was too far away, and the weight mismatch was too much to overcome, so that's something to be cautious of. If it's Bowser or Rob and they're going very close to the edge, you can still try it, but the success rate is much lower than it is with other characters. Here are some other important examples of troubleshooting. Sometimes the CPU, there's a bit of variability within the routes that they take, so sometimes it could be driving the same route on, let's say, the Twilight house balcony, and sometimes they'll be very close to the edge, and sometimes they'll be much closer to the wall of the house, and in this case, bumping them off is much more difficult to do. And there's also carts being hit at the improper angle, which, as you'll see in the coming video example, this causes a lot of difficulty, and it's almost never successful if you don't hit them from the side. So right here, Toad has 2 balloons, and he is driving around the balcony right here. But because I hit him early, he ends up being kind of far away from the edge. So even though he's a much lighter character, I can't perform the bump off here, and I just have to settle for eliminating him in more conventional ways. And here's a good example of the cart being hit at the wrong angle. Rob is reinflating a balloon, but the problem is that he is facing the ledge, so I can't hit him directly from the side of his cart. So I wait until he's vulnerable again, and he's very close to the edge, so I try to perform the bump off, but as you can see, it just does not work when you don't go for the side of the cart. When you go for the back, you almost never move the CPU, and in the worst cases, you end up being bumped yourself, which can cause you to fall off. And the last thing I wanted to discuss, there's no video example for this, but do not hop when you're applying the bump to the CPU, because going from the ground to the air takes out a lot of the weight that you have, so if you hit a CPU while you're mid-air, it generally doesn't cause the same effect as if you keep it on the ground and then just apply the bump regularly. So that's it for this presentation. There's a few people I wanted to thank, namely Superstario, GamerJGB, Puddings, and Brutus for providing valuable information and video examples related to the presentation. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to know more about more specific methods on like Twilight House or DS, I can try to make more specific guides for that. But other than that, if you have any other just comments, general feedback, other balloon battle inquiries, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and that's all for now, and I'll see you in the next guide.